Minister Netanyahu, how are you, sir?
I'm fine, Mark. It's good to talk to you.
It's a pleasure. I observed your speech at the United Nations, and as usual, you give a hell of a speech. And
Thank you.
You pointed out the secret atomic warehouse in Iran. Do you want to describe that in some detail to the audience here?
Yeah, a few months ago, we conducted a daring raid in the heart of Tehran and took from secret vaults in an innocent-looking compound in a southern district of Tehran. We brought over 100,000 secret files and videos of Iran's secret nuclear weapons program. We brought it to Israel. And then I went public and showed a short summary of that to the international media. Yesterday, I uncovered a second secret site that the Iranians have. This time it's not primarily for archives or for documents. It's for equipment and material. And it's another secret warehouse in Tehran, about 3 miles from the other secret site. What they have there or had until recently, were 15 containers, like ship containers, worth of equipment and material. We also know that last month in August, they had, early August actually, they removed 15 kilograms of radioactive material from the site, spread it in various places in Iran to hide the evidence. So obviously they're hiding this. And I said that the International Atomic Energy Agency should go and inspect that site. We gave this information to leading intelligence agencies a while ago. We gave this information to the IAEA 6 weeks ago. And my hope and my request is that they go inspect the site. You remember the promise that was given when they did this disastrous Iran nuclear deal, is that you can have inspections anytime, anywhere. So my request is to do the inspections right now, right there.
And do you think they will?
Well, I hope so. There's no reason not to. I mean, what I can tell you is that since the discovery of since we discovered or uncovered the first site, the secret atomic archives, Iran has been busy trying to clear out the second site, the secret atomic warehouse. But even if they get out the material, they might very well leave all sorts of radioactive imprints. So I think I think they should go there as speedily as possible. We're not giving fake information, not on the first one or on the second one. It's all real, all too real.
Mr. Prime Minister, your relationship with the President of the United States seems to be very, very good. How would you describe that?
Very, very, very good.
Yeah. Is it the best in Israel's history, modern history?
Look, I can say this. I think there's a tremendous alliance between Israel and the United States, and it's gone through several presidents and several administrations. But I can say unequivocally that the alliance between Israel and the United States under President Trump has never been stronger. It's stronger than ever in every field.
You know, Mr. Prime Minister, you brought up the Iranians hiding their atomic-related materials and so forth, your relationship with the United States. There are some people in the United States who say, well, that's all swell what the Iranians are doing. What does that have to do with us? What do you want to tell them?
Look, Iran, the caste that governs Iran, doesn't really govern it. The tyrants of Tehran, I mean, they're just, they're dictators. They have an ideology, and their ideology says that they should govern the world, that there is one major satanic force in the world. It's the great Satan. It's called the United States. Israel is merely an adjunct of that. We're a small Satan, except we're closer by, and we prevent them from taking over the western part of the Middle East. So ultimately their goal is the United States. They're building or try to build nuclear weapons for that purpose. That's why the Iran deal, as President Trump said, is so disastrous, because it actually gives them a highway to enrich uranium for 100 nuclear bombs or more. Didn't prevent them from developing the ballistic missiles at all, didn't even touch it, to reach the United States with those 100 and more atomic bombs. So I'd say, if you're, and this is a preeminent terrorist regime of our time. I mean, they sponsor terrorism all over the place. In fact, their agents were caught a few months ago plotting terrorist attacks on American soil. And so to have the leading terrorist regime of the world that is ideologically committed to death to America, to have nuclear weapons and the means to deliver them to any place in the United States, I'd say that should concern every American, to say the least.
We look at this situation in Syria, which is extremely dangerous. You've got Russia involved, you've got Turkey, Iran, you've got all kinds of terrorist groups, and of course the terrorist regime in Syria. And the Iranians, of course, they keep trying to build these sites closer and closer to Israel's borders and threaten Israel and so forth. Can you explain to the American people why this is so serious?
What Iran wants to do is to build an empire that begins in Iran and goes all the way to the Mediterranean. Iran, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, that they already control, and have one land continuum. They want a base, a submarine base in Syria on the Mediterranean that could challenge the Sixth Fleet, could challenge all of America's interests, could challenge Europe, all your other key allies. That could challenge American forces in the Middle East. They want to put in air power there that could challenge American planes. And most of all, they'd want to put their army there to continue the campaign to eradicate Israel. If this were to succeed, then the whole Middle East would collapse, and it would collapse into Iran's hands. They're already trying to encircle the Middle East by going beyond this northern continuum to the Mediterranean. They're going to Yemen, and they're already firing rockets, 700-kilometer range rockets, into Riyadh, into Saudi Arabia. So they're out on a mission of conquest. If the Middle East were to fall, America's vital interests would be jeopardized in a way that will be instantly, readily available. The shipping lanes, the world's trade, the prestige of the United States, the allies of the United States. People go with the strong. And if your enemies, your sworn enemies, committed to your destruction, are able to conquer a critical part of the world, that is very, very bad. So what we've learned from history is that you want to stop bad things when they're small, not when they're big. Right now, there's a new alliance taking place. First of all, the alliance between America and Israel, as I said, under President Trump, is stronger than ever before, but President Trump has done something else. He's recognized the threat from Iran, and instead of coddling Iran, embracing Iran, he's confronting Iran. And he's putting sanctions, reimposing American sanctions on the regime that threatens everyone. And that is having a very powerful effect in weakening Iran. It's not the same Iran. The president says the Iran's economy is not the same as it was. Well, you want an indication of that? How right he is? I mean, the value of the currency, Iran's currency, has plummeted. It used to be 40,000 reals to the dollar just a few months ago. Now it's 170 or 80,000 reals to the dollar. That's, they lost a tremendous amount of the value of their currency in no time. So it's working, and the president is not appeasing this theological dictatorship, theocracy. He's confronting it, and that's the right thing to do against people who are your sworn enemies.
There's a lot of great things happening inside Israel. I've been there recently. I see just building and building and building going on. I see American companies there. I see a lot of technology there. So even though you have all these enemies surrounding you, how is it that your economy has grown to the extent it's grown and your technology is really, it's really developed in a big way?
Well, one word: freedom. Freedom.
Yeah.
I've spent a good chunk of my time in office, both as prime minister and for a stint as finance minister, to liberate the Israeli economy. to make it a free market economy. And if you combine free markets with the ingenuity of our people, you get thousands and thousands of startups that are creating these fantastic companies, in autonomous vehicles and IT and cybersecurity and medical devices and digital health, in precision agriculture, you name it. I mean, we're there. We're all over the place. And Israel is the other brilliant center of technology innovation, because people know that they can actually make companies, and the companies stand to make great fortunes. They can also lose. Many of them do, but many of them succeed. And so it gives the incentive for this kind of innovation. Free markets, I'd say innovation without free markets doesn't work. Technology without free markets doesn't work. Free markets without innovations eventually produce innovation. That's what happened. That's what happened in Israel once we liberated those markets.
Now, I know you need to go, but I got to ask you this question. Cheltenham High School, you went to Cheltenham. I went to Cheltenham. You're a little older than I am. Do you really remember anything about Cheltenham?
As a matter of fact, I do. I mean,
yeah.
You must remember it. First of all, when I first came there as a teenager, I couldn't believe my eyes. It looked to me like it was some grand hotel. At the time, it looked like, it was very modern, and it had, I must tell you, it had excellent teachers, and they had this system. I don't know if they had it in your time, of honors classes. You remember that?
Oh yeah.
Well, so they put me in these honors classes, and there was about 10 kids per class, and the teachers were uniformly good, and I received a great education, formed some lasting friendships. In fact, I just met a guy who was with me on the soccer team, because I played soccer. I was an Israeli, so I knew how to play soccer. He then went on to do all sorts of things in pharmaceuticals, but I didn't see him for about 50 years. And I just met him, and so time stood still, and I still remember those days quite fondly. I think I received a wonderful education and a great appreciation for the greatness of America, for its freedom, for its ingenuity, for its combination of individualism and patriotism and nationalism. And I think these are the things that characterize Israel too, and that's why in many ways we're kindred societies. That's what the Islamists say about us. They say you are they and they are you. And in this respect, the deepest values, they're absolutely right.
And you were there, weren't you, because your father was this great historian. I just want the American people to know this. I believe he was at the University of Pennsylvania and then MIT. Am I right about that?
No, he actually was in a small college at the time called Dropsy College. I don't think it exists anymore. But he was doing researches for his for what became later a very, I would say, groundbreaking work on medieval Spain and the Inquisition. He was one of the great Hispanists, and there was a great Hispanic library in Philadelphia, so we were there. But he subsequently went to Cornell University, and then after my brother fell in the raid on Entebbe to release Israeli hostages held by German and Arab terrorists, returned to Israel. But the time we spent in Philadelphia was something that I always valued and treasured, even though I was very homesick. But I learned later that I gleaned much from it. And yes, my father was a great scholar, a great historian, and he taught me about the great things that can be achieved by a free human spirit.
Well, I wasn't going to do this, but you raised it, your brother. My wife, Julie's been reading letters from your brother. And your brother was a brilliant young man. He was a courageous young man. He was not just a fighter, but he was a man of peace, too. And in Entebbe, that was a horrible, horrible thing, but he was a hero, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. And he didn't have to die to become a legend. He was a legend in his own lifetime. He died at the age of 30, but he had led many missions. He was, I would say in many ways, a philosopher, even a poet, but he was also a warrior because he understood that in the circumstances of Israel's birth and our battle to protect our life in a very hostile Middle East, there was no, as he said, I have no alternative but to devote my life to the defense of my people and my country, which he did. Even though he had studied at Harvard and was made the dean's list, after he was wounded in the Six-Day War, he was all of 21. He went to Harvard, stayed there for a year, was operated on because of the wound he received in the Six-Day War. Was actually operated in Walter Reed Hospital. But he said, I have to come back to Israel. And he did. I entered the army at the time. I was younger than him. And he said to me, I can't sit on the sidelines and watch Israel sustain the terror attacks that began in those days. I have to go back into the army. And I want to go back into your unit, it's a special unit. And I said, you're out of your mind. You're wounded. You're disabled. He said, I don't care. I'm going back in. And by sheer force of will, he made it back, joined my unit, became its commander, and led the forces to Entebbe, where they rescued the Israeli hostages under impossible circumstances. And in that daring raid, he was the only soldier who died, and left a great legacy of heroism. I have to say that when I go today around the Arab world, they know of the story and they appreciate it, because you have to understand the Arab world too has changed. It's changed because they see the common threat of Iran, because they understand that Israel is not their enemy but they're an invaluable ally, because they want not only cooperation in fending off militant Islam, but also our technology for giving their people a better life. So when you say how's Israel's doing, it's doing remarkably well economically because of free markets, but it's also doing well geopolitically because we've joined now with President Trump and under President Trump in a common battle against the forces that threaten our common civilization. And that's reason for hope.
Well, you're a remarkable man, remarkable brother, remarkable family, and I want to thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. And always good to talk to you.
You too. God bless. There he is, Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.